to say good evening to everyone. I guess, a wonderful Tuesday, but I guess it's according to where you are. Um, I'd like to make sure that we send our prayers out to those victims who've been ravished by the storm and those who made it through it. Of course, we're praying for them and we're thankful they did, but there are many people who suffered tremendously. And so I just want to make sure that we are mindful of those folk who have been hit by the storms and those who continue to be hit by the storms. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Good evening, Dr. Miles. I'm well, and yourself?
Hey, I'm absolutely wonderful here. Jackie, guess what? Each week we make this promise, right? We have got to get your face on Facebook Live with us. All right. So,
I'm going to do my research this week as well. Yes, we've got to do
and,
that.
and I'll make sure things happen, but let's just make sure we can do that because
Okay.
everybody talks about it. They hear your voice. They say, who's the face
Who
behind the
is
voice?
she?
At least people are tuning in and they are hearing your voice and you're coming through clearly. So I'm really happy about that. All right.
Nice to have a little mystery.
Exactly. Not that's too much mystery though, I think. But just, as we're waiting, I want to just do a few announcements. I talked about those people who are ravished by the storms, the hurricanes and so forth, Louisiana and other states. And our prayers are out to them. I know that Georgia is doing a great job in getting supplies to them. But Jackie, was Mississippi hit? First of all, you're not in Mississippi, but I was wondering if Mississippians were hit by this at all.
From my understanding, because as you know, my parents are in Mississippi, and so they were not hit very hard. I have a sister who was on the coast. She had a lot of rain, but not much damage. She said she did hear that people who were west of her, closer to New Orleans had some, were hit harder.
Right.
But I don't know of anyone in Mississippi that, suffered any major.
And that's
Yeah.
great. And did South Florida receive any of the end of the weather?
Nope. I mean, we got rain, but that was it. And we always have rain. So
okay.
South Florida was spared this time, which was nice.
Yeah, that's South Florida, the rain, right?
Yes.
I'm so familiar with it also.
I know.
Jackie, I want to welcome our viewers on. I'm Dr. Willie Miles. I am the president of Dr. Willie Miles Children Foundation, located right here in Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, our mission is very simple. It is to make children the priority. Make children the priority. And we do that by hosting these meetings every week, along with summits throughout the year and giveaways during the and so forth. But again, I want to make you aware that we're working hard here in Atlanta and Georgia, and Jackie is out of South Florida. Jackie, tell them who you are.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Hampton Clements. I'm a career educator, currently principal here in South Florida.
All right. Hi, Lisette. She's on our Facebook watching us live. All right. So, hey, Jackie, there are a few announcements I want to make, and those announcements are upcoming live streams.
Okay.
Tonight is parental involvement. It's a choice. It's not a choice. It's a necessary commitment. And before I go further, I want our viewers to understand that we ain't playing with this. This is a very serious situation about parents taking responsibility for their children during the times of a pandemic and not sitting back waiting for someone else to educate their children.
Yeah, and I know we're going to get into it more, but I wanted to say also, you mentioned it, that pandemic makes this requirement and necessity even greater.
It's critical. On September the 21st, Jackie, which is next week, our is the invisible parent. You're home, but your children don't see you.
Big one. You're going to offend some people there.
I don't mind offending the adults. Truth always offends folk. But there's so many of our families, the parents are there, but the kids don't see them.
And interestingly enough, they believe that just being physically there, fills the requirement. So that's going to be a great topic.
And on the 28th, today's children, they need more than get ready for school. They need you.
Yep. More than uniforms and shoes. Absolutely.
So you can see that these topics for this entire month has been geared toward parental involvement. And Jackie, historically, we talk about parental involvement. It's like, okay, let the schools take care of them. I ain't got time to be going to that. That's what they get paid for. everything we talk about now, Jackie, we're looking at it through a different lens. We're looking at it through the lens of a pandemic.
And, you know, Dr. Miles, I think we should also share with people that we're also looking at it through the lens of when it's absent, because we see that, you know, you see it on the counseling end. I see it in the schools. An absent parent, and we don't mean physically absent, as you alluded to a moment ago, we mean a parent that is not really filling that role in that educational process or in that child rearing process. It just presents major crises because of the pandemic.
Yeah, where I'm going with this, though, I'm going with parents have been noticeably absent. So parents being absent is not anything new. I mean, for the last 10 years, we've been trying to get parents engaged in their children's education. So the non-engagement is not new. But under the different lens, see, the old time parents not engaged, guess what? Teachers got their back, and the schools did it.
Exactly.
But now, schools ain't doing it, and teachers ain't got your back because they all quarantined.
Right, and schools can't do it. Even with children being back in school, there's so much recovery. And of course, over the last 12 months, children were being educated at home. So as you point out, this is simply a time where parents cannot be absent. You cannot, you know, relegate your role to someone else. The bottom line is, if the parents are not engaged, that child is not being educated. And I'm going to put that out there.
And I'm going to say this also. People, it sounds like we're being, and our goal is not to be condescending, but I'm telling you, Jack, I don't get afraid too often, but I'm fearful for our next generation of young people if the parents don't take charge of their education.
Dr. Miles, you should be.
I'm really, it's all like, you know, like something in your soul that says it's sad.
Dr. Miles, we're about to see a generation of people graduate from high school who really cannot read at a functional level.
And they graduate. Right.
Exactly. Who cannot do basic math at a functional level, meaning go to the store, pay 62 cents, and know how much change to get. So you should be alarmed, because eventually, you know, these people become our caregivers, they become our emergency care people, they become our teachers.
But they're they can't read and do math. But, you know, again, I guess we're talking out of passion, and we're going to talk about a lot of that tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about what happens to children when parents are not. And I don't want to change this word engaged, because I think that's an overused word.
I agree. And it's misunderstood. Yes.
I think at this point, this is critical.
Yes.
You know, this is not like come to the parent meeting. If you don't, we'll send you an email. I will send you a letter. Folk, you know, you're talking about, and I'm not equating this to a storm, but I am.
But it's a storm.
It's a storm.
It's coming. It's like it's a category 5 coming our way. Parents, too many. Now, of course, we know that there are engaged parents, so clearly this would not be for them, but there are far too many who have learned to rely on school and computers.
Well, I'm gonna say
to
though,
educate their kids.
You know, I know you're not doing this, but I'm not gonna start out being apologetic. I just say if the shoe fit, wear it, and we all can learn something. We all can learn.
Absolutely.
So if you're on here and you're offended, you're probably in the wrong place, because our
no, if you're on here and offended, you're probably in the right place, because you need to learn a few things and you need to get engaged. So,
all right. So let's get this started. Let's get this started with information. When we talked about this parent involvement, the reason we started talking about it, Jackie, one is because, not just because of, but because of your principalship. And not only that, but you've always talked about engaging parents, and parents need to be engaged. But we looked at it from a duality, from a parent and school engagement. Well, you know, I'm sort of like making this not plurality. I'm simply saying, you need to be engaged with your child at home. You need to engage inside the home.
Right.
At this point, I don't need to engage too much outside the home. I need to engage inside the home. And Jackie, we're going to give them some ideas and things to do to show how they're engaged. But I kind of
Right. We're going to talk about some scenarios because, as you said, Dr. Miles, the term engagement, I think, as you pointed out, is overused, but it's completely misunderstood.
certainly.
Um, when a child shows up, for instance, and as I looked over some of the research, some kind of obvious things were missing. I said, maybe people don't really know what we mean. So do you know if your child goes to school with pencils every day? Because if not, you're not engaged. Someone at that school is trying to figure out how to get them pencils, why you haven't checked to make sure they have them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what does it look like? What are we talking about when we're saying you're not engaged and that it's missing and it's affecting the education?
Before you get there, I want to talk about, I just want to get into what the research says.
Okay, absolutely.
And the research focus is very clear, and we don't need research to tell us this. It says that the research says there's overwhelming evidence that when parents are not involved, it impacts, not only impacts the child, but it impacts their achievement.
Exactly.
It impacts their achievement. And not only does it impact their achievement, but it impacts how they interact with other people.
Mm-hmm. What I think parents miss sometimes is that your child knows when you're engaged. And by engaged, we mean they know if you have been clear on whether or not that education is important by your verbal, your nonverbal, what you have said, what you haven't said, what you allow them to do. So this term engagement really has to be broken down. But the children know, and that's why it affects so much of what they do.
But it also, next it says, what does it say about, what's the research say about it when parents are not involved? It says that children don't learn how to properly respect their authority figures when the parents are not engaged.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds, yeah.
Yep.
That sounds
and
familiar.
Again, they begin to learn that their education simply isn't important.
That's amazing.
But that's what we're seeing. We saw it with virtual education. And again, as you said, no apologies. Parents not this. Parents don't know how to do this. Guess what? Figure it out. Right? The whole world shifted. Figure it out. Figure out what it should look like. Figure out what you need to do to make sure your child continues to learn. Because as we return to school and we're doing the assessments, I can guarantee you students have lost ground. And there really was no reason for that.
Well, the thing about it, the ones who are losing ground had already lost ground, and they're worse behind. They're more behind now.
Yeah, it's a reality.
And let's just be clear about it. These are marginalized populations, and they're usually populations of color.
Mm-hmm. And many were already behind because, again, the parental ownership, I think that's the word I want to use tonight.
Right. Good.
The parental ownership of education, of their child's education, was in many instances already lacking. In a physical environment, in a face-to-face environment, it was lacking. So when it came to technology and the virtual learning, so many people literally, Dr. Miles, use that as a reason to not engage the child. Right. I know some kids who didn't attend virtual or anything for half the school year.
Yeah.
I mean, parents literally say, oh, I don't know how to do that. Oh, I can't teach him. Oh, we don't have this and we don't have that. Find it.
Or when I left for work, and we're very sensitive to working parents. We get it because we're the same way.
Yeah.
Left for work, I told him to get up. He told me he was up, and I found out he wasn't up. But Jackie, I don't want to. I want to park right here just for a little while because I want this to marinate with people. What happens to your children when you are not engaged? They don't learn how to respect authority figures, and they don't take their education seriously. So, Jackie, is that the missing piece you think behind this academic failure?
Has been for a very long time,
Dr.
Miles.
Is that the piece about the authority figure that the kids go to school and tell teachers off and
of
call,
course.
B's, O's, and all? Am I hearing that those children do that because their parents are not.
Engaged, taking ownership, right? And I just don't think that some parents understand, again, that your actions speak louder than your words. And if your words and actions are not consistent, you are still sending a message to your child. And so it doesn't matter to them what the teacher says, because they know that there's no follow-up at home. There's no consequences. And
Well,
Dr. Miles, I'm going to take that a step further.
mhm.
I have seen parents come and argue why children shouldn't do homework. Oh, it's too much. I thought, really? What else are they doing? 30 minutes, an hour? I mean, much, but a lot of them dismissed over, they don't understand. Then it's your job, taking ownership, to say, listen to the teacher when they're teaching. Or it's your job to say, by the way, teacher, my child was in class, but they said they didn't understand. Ownership means solving the problems as to why your child is not being educated. It doesn't mean pointing a finger and saying, oh, well.
Well, I think that, I'm going to sort of like mess with this ownership thing because, all this bothers me a little bit. All of this, all of this bothers me a little bit. Like the ownership. Hey, it's your child. Why are we talking about ownership and responsibility when it's your child? But Jackie, I can think about this moment. I think about this and say, parents do take ownership. They only take ownership when they want to raise hell. That's my child, and you ain't gonna do that to him. So take that same kind of vigilance that this is my child. I'm gonna educate him. This is my child.
What about the ownership you take when you go out and buy a $150 backpack? What about the ownership you take when you make sure they have the cutest little shoes and outfits, but they don't have pencils? What about the ownership you take when fast food is delivered to your child for lunch every day? So all of that takes time, energy, and effort. Now, how much time have you invested in understanding what they need to learn at their grade level, what those standards are, and just check with your child. Like, hey, by the way, what's 12 plus 42?
Well, that's too much now. Let's start with like 6 plus 10. All right.
No. Let's start with, what's your first and last name?
Well, that is very important. That's very important. I just want to bring this out. I have an engaged parent who's on right now, and I know this family. They have 2 children, and I kind of feel it. They're 2 young children. She said, I have to get out the live stream now because I have to get the kids ready for bed. That makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll make sure to watch the recording.
Right. Again, ownership. Yes.
And she didn't make an excuse. There ain't no excuse that I can't be on the live stream because I got children. It is parental ownership that she did, and parent engagement that she did.
And clearly being consistent about their schedules, about them getting rest. Dr. Miles, we could do a session on that. These children being allowed to stay up at all hours with cell phones.
Well, that's okay. Now that's another story about this ownership thing and setting schedules and responsibility.
Yes.
I'm put it like the old folks say, and I'm old. Put a nail in this thing. Uninvolved parenting is called neglectful parenting.
Can we take parenting off and just call it neglect?
That's what it is.
It is.
And so parents, we're not here to beat up on you. We're here just to emphasize the importance of you getting engaged and knowing that if you don't do it, the vernacular is, it ain't gonna get done.
Right.
Not during this pandemic stage, folk. I'm telling you.
Right.
We had some cushion before because we had caring teachers who were not sick. We had caring teachers who didn't have to face their own families having COVID.
Right.
But how many teachers do y'all have out, like in not in your school, but like in the county? You have
as a report I got maybe 2 weeks ago said there were about 500 teachers out in the district, about 400 students, and these are just with COVID, not out for other reasons.
Right.
So we had about quite a few numbers,
So we
And
have,
people,
I'm sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say, and so that number is, of course, continuously growing. We have a lot of educators who are not returning to the classroom because of their own situations or family situations. So the point that you just made, that where in the past teachers may have had the capacity to take more ownership of your child's education, that has been greatly diminished.
Oh, I'm telling you. And if there's anything we can do at the foundation, to help, we can check it. We can start sending out like worksheets. We can start sending out like things to help the parents. And I'll make sure that happens. I just want to make sure that we get reports of parents being um, engaged and involved in their children's education, not at the school I'm talking about now. I'm talking at home. See, I'm not
Well,
focused.
Dr. Miles, again, the whole topic is interesting. Why we are having to have conversations with parents about being the lead in their children's life or in their child's education is in and of itself part of the problem. And we don't have that research on just when this started, this concept of they're yours from 8 to 5 or from 8 to 3. So do whatever you have to do, and I take care of them from 3 on. This is not a joint ownership. We ain't co-parenting. We didn't bring this child into the world. When I say we, I mean the schools and education. So there's no such thing as we have them from 9 to 3 and they're yours after 3. No, they're yours all the time.
Well, the other thing, Chuck, I want to throw up this also, and people, don't worry about it. We're going to get to some solutions, but what we're trying to do is give you the brevity, the impact of not being engaged, the impact of not being engaged. And Jackie, what I'm seeing across the board and what the research is supporting is that no engagement impacts and really provides a lot of risk factors. I mean, problems for that child. The parents who are uninvolved, no attachment. The parents who are uninvolved usually find themselves focusing on themselves and their desires, and they lack of emotional attachment, no set rules or expectations for behaviors other than are you with me?
An academic achievement. I mean, I would like to see some surveys. Does the average parent know what quote unquote academic achievement they're looking for? In other words, do you know where your child starts out at the beginning of the year, and then do you know where they are along the way? Do you know if they're learning or not? Do you know what they're supposed to be learning? Again, these are expectations. It's just like saying, are you the one who's supposed to know if the child is sick? Or do you just say, hey, doctors are supposed to keep up with whether or not my child is sick, and
Have insurance.
Exactly. So I don't know when education became this thing that parents felt that they could drop the child off. And for a while, this is not my issue. I don't have ownership.
Well, Jackie, it's kind of interesting. In the month of October, we're going to deal with the generations.
That's going to be interesting.
Generation X, Generation Alpha, We're going to deal with those because I think
the baby boomers.
I think that has an impact on how people react today. And see, what's interesting though, the parents of today are reacting based upon what their parents fail to do. And so the children of today were responding to their children based upon what the uninvolved parent did today.
Mm-hmm.
Am I making sense?
You are. I mean, at least to me. But and I think that is a good point. And I think that's why we have different expectation levels.
Right.
And the bar has really been lowered. And again, at some point, I'd just love to see the research that discusses when we just, decided that education was not home-based. Was not a home-based priority.
I don't think we even had a bar.
Well, Dr. Miles, I have to take issue. We had a bar before we got into those schools. We
when
had a bar before Brown versus
you
Board.
know, again, I don't mean, let me rephrase that. I don't think that many parents today have a bar.
Oh,
So, no,
I agree.
so in other
I
words,
think that's a
there
problem.
is no foundation that says, I know what he should be
Exactly.
and I know where he is. So in other words,
Exactly.
guess what? My car, I know when it needs gas, so I fill it up. I
Mhm.
know when it needs to be washed, and the car can't say nothing to me. So I wash it. And I call that car my baby girl. You see where I'm going with this right here? So,
Absolutely.
so
Some cars get cleaned every weekend. They get regular maintenance. They get everything. I mean, we're not going to let that car lapse. But then
and
we have a child in school.
but we do that to Jack. We do that for the car because we value the car.
Mhm.
And so the question is, now the comment is, should we not be doing the same thing for our children?
I really think, Dr. Miles, I mean, and I'm definitely gonna, give everyone credit for quote unquote valuing their children in their own way. I just think because of what you mentioned generationally,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we know what that is supposed, I don't think many know what that is supposed to look like. I don't think many know what ownership looks like.
I like
And
to
again, I'm saying this from practice.
I like to hear from our audience some things that y'all think. I mean, just type into your comment section, like give us some feedback so we can deal with your feedback. I know they're saying, well, good Lord, y'all just hit into us like I don't know what. And I keep saying the shoe fit, wear it, don't fit, hey, keep walking. But I say that we are gonna get to some positive things.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, to know if our audience thinks that, education has changed. And I don't just mean for the pandemic. If the audience feels that children, the 2020s is the same as, maybe, 2015,
Well,
2010, and
well,
I'm not even going to go back
I don't
to
need
the
no
80s and
research
the
for that.
90s.
We don't need no research for that because I think
We don't need research because we're in the field, but
right.
I don't think the average parent is aware.
No,
Um,
parents, I think many parents are not aware because oftentimes the parents, some of them are finding themselves so overwhelmed with their daily lives. Like we said, usually the unengaged parent is focused on their own problems and not realizing that being focused on your own problems means also being focused on your child.
on your child, and honestly, your child as a priority.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because think about that. This is lifelong. There's a lifelong impact. This is generational. This what you do with your child is going to affect your grandchildren.
But
Um,
it was interesting. We're gonna sort of like, I know I got really emotional on that thing, but I it's sort of like we're doing a deja vu with our children, and we had the pandemic that's doing it before we had people that was doing it.
right, right,
So I get that same feeling that this oppression, but this time it's us parents that are causing the oppression of our own children.
right. Directly or indirectly,
Yeah,
intentionally or unintentionally.
right.
It really is a time to embrace them more. Um, it's a time to sit with, but not do for.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's.
it,
I think what you're doing, you jumped into the benefits, and that's exactly where I'm headed next.
right.
The benefits of parent involvement. But one thing we quote research because we don't want to y'all just think this is we're just talking off the top of our head. We're just making this stuff up. But the research we have, Jackie, says that when parents are involved, are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
It impacts the child's cognitive development, which means the child's thinking abilities. The child being able to rationalize
And
and
let's pin this for a minute.
mm-hmm,
It's not just what they think, it's their ability
mm-hmm,
to think and process information.
exactly.
Can your child receive information, process it, and then respond? Because they can all hear, but what we're seeing are children who are not processing the information.
But you know what's
So that
interesting?
is cognitive development.
You know, such Jack, in therapy, what I'm seeing, and this is sort of like bringing some things together for me. I have a lot of children who are having difficulty focusing. Now, maybe their issues they could be organic, but I began to wonder: is it because the lack of parent engagement, attention, and focus? Are you with me?
Focus is the what word of the millennium? I mean, word of the decade for
Mhm.
education. Lack of focus. There are a lot of factors affecting it, but that parental engagement is definitely playing a role.
But Jackie,
And
start going.
I think sometimes you hear me say it often. We have to be intentional parents. That starts at 0. And for me, it is a no-brainer. But when a child at 2 is given an electronic device, um, to me, it's really no mystery why focus is an issue. Because wherever you go, you look around and little children, 2, 3, 4, are sitting with devices where there's nothing but hyperactivity going on.
But
Hyperactivity. Colors, wow, Disney, just it's insane. And then they get to school and we're like, they can't focus. Well, let's see. Their 2 to 4-year-old brain has been trained on hyperactivity. Of course they can't focus. It's all training. And it doesn't start at 5 or 6 or 7. Again, ownership from the beginning. School does not start in the building. It starts at home. Dr. Miles, you're muted. Dr. Miles, you're muted. Dr. Miles, you're muted.
house
That's better.
motivation. Think about this. Uh, So we say, first of all, it increases the child's cognitive development, it improves the child motivation, and it also encourages positive relationships. Look how important the parent is to the child.
You know, Dr. Miles, again, a baby, an infant seeks their parents' attention, right? That does not go away. So when the child becomes school age, then the attention has to be, focused around the school. That is a major part of that child's life. So imagine just being dropped off and picked up, but no discussion about school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're literally saying that part's not important. Let me take you home. Let me feed you. Let me put you to bed. I'm going to
Well,
make sure you got shoes, and I'm going to take you back tomorrow.
but think about Jackie. Yeah, again, and I know we use the word school, liberally, like, but I'm thinking of just concerned about him or her. You know, how was your day? What did you do? How was your math class today? How was your science class today? What did you do in spelling? Are you with me?
Totally.
Some
Totally.
specific, not just how was your school day? Good. Okay, great. You want McDonald's? It is really slowing ourselves down as parents and letting our children know that we're checking up on them.
Yeah, there has to be a crossover between the two. You're riding in the car. Okay, what are your spelling words this week? Let's go. Start spelling. You know, bring learning home, connected. When they know that it's coming home, they know you're asking. We have situations with behavior. When that child knows the parent is asking about behavior every day, they're going to think twice about
Of
what they're
course.
doing in school.
But guess what? Not only just asking about the behavior, but they know they better tell the truth because the parent's going to validate it.
Exactly. There you go. You better tell me the truth because I'm definitely checking. And yes, let them know you're checking. Like this whole thing about, not checking on your children. Of course you do.
Yep, you better do that. We're really on this thing about what parents can do to help their children and the impact of your presence. And I could just do a summary of all this and say that the parent's presence impacts the total child. But I want to just call out some things so that parents can get this. It impacts the child's self-confidence. It impacts the child's self-esteem. And your environment increases the child's motivation. And
And
for
mhm.
parents who are involved, the child is least likely to misbehave at school.
Yeah. And let's, carry that a little bit further. The parental engagement at school has been identified as a potential factor in
Hmm.
protecting adolescents from risky sexual behavior
Yeah.
and reproductive health behaviors. Okay.
I
Just
just
think about it. Parental ownership.
I don't know if parents realize how important they are. And there's some parents who feel like they're just used to like the kid don't like me. I wouldn't care whether he likes me or not. I'm gonna ask some questions.
A lot. I'm going to ask them to demonstrate what they're
Right.
doing and what they're learning.
But also to explain to them why you're asking the questions.
Hmm.
And the reason you ask the question, one is because I love you. Two, it's because I'm responsible for your development. I'm responsible for you. And three, I want you to have a good life in the future with a good education.
And education is a priority. It's really painful, Dr. Miles, to be as a professional in this field and see how many students from all socioeconomic backgrounds. We should point out this is not
Mhm.
uh, you know I see it at all levels,
Right.
who just view education as a side thing. I think right now K-12 in many ways is being used as daycare.
Yeah.
Kids are dropped off and okay, so I think they're safe for the next few hours. And without the ownership, I mean, I don't think the parents are, there are some parents who are not checking to see if they're learning and what they're learning.
The other thing about it, I can hear some parents saying, "Oh, y'all doing talking about what I'm supposed to do, but what about the teacher supposed to do?" At this point, this is not a discussion about teachers at all.
I
It's
mean, let's face it, a teacher has your child for 10 months, possibly out of their entire life. So what the teacher is supposed to do, with all respect, is also based on parental ownership. I mean, teachers who know that their parents are engaged, that their parents are going to ask, they're
Mhm.
going to be better teachers.
Well, the thing about it, Jackie, as a parent, um, I'm just very important about who's putting what into my child. In other words, who's depositing into my child.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be engaged with whomever is depositing because
Right?
I want to make sure that they're depositing the right kind of stuff. And what they're depositing, I agree with it.
Exactly. Because
Right?
that deposit goes beyond their academics.
The impact of the parents being engaged. Kids earn higher grades. They graduate from high school and attend post-secondary education for parents who are engaged, and they develop a self-confidence and
Hmm.
inside the classroom, outside the classroom, and at home.
Right. So, really, in that regard, Dr. Miles, the education is a joint uh, process between parent and child,
Hmm.
right? They're both in it together. The child is not in the education system alone, it's joint. And they have to know and sense that and feel that and experience that from their parents.
You said something that was real. Just I'm not sure you got it, but I'm gonna accentuate this because the old model says it's a partnership between the parent, the child, and the school. But the real partnership
It's between the
is
parent and child.
and the parent.
Yes, it really is.
That's the partnership.
Hmm.
And then the partnership is between the child and the parent. The school gonna be okay.
The school is a support for
Exactly.
the child's education. And too often it's been looked at the other way. Oh, the parent can support it, but we're responsible for doing it anyway. Sure, you can try. But
And
children are very savvy now. So if their parents are not engaged, you can try to push into them all you want to.
and the reason this partnership is so important between the child and the parent is because at the end of the day, who's the responsible parties?
Hmm.
Not the schools. Because the
No.
school I never see them again.
Right.
But I'm
Right.
stuck with the child until he turns 18. And when he goes to college, I'm still stuck with him. So that means the accountable party is the partnership.
Yes. And it is a partnership between the two. Obviously, with the parents and lead, it's their responsibility to define that, establish it as a priority, as well as establish the goals. what is our goal in this learning process? And I mean that at every grade,
Right.
right? Kindergarten, okay, I'm going to go learn those letters. That's what they do. They learn letters, colors, they start writing. Honestly, that starts at our 3-year-old programs and sometimes at our 2-year-old programs. So again, this whole education thing, dropping your child off is not just daycare. It is an education process, right? And it has to be a partnership. And that requires a parent to say, here's why you're going to school. Here's what we're going to learn. And then here's how we're going to continue it at home.
But sort of my thinking is, I know that schools still exist, and I'm not trying to discount them, but I really am. I'm trying to get parents to focus on, well, what if schools didn't exist?
Exactly.
And I want them to focus on. I'm not really trying to focus on, how they get along at school at this point, because if I can get the family to understand the relationship, the school will be taken care of. And so
Absolutely.
our message is, it's a home thing. It's a home thing. Ain't no sense in raising hell at the schools. There's no sense in having expectation of the schools, because guess what? The partnership between you and the school is an external partnership.
Absolutely.
The child in you is internal, because you got an investment, and the investment is you, and the child belongs to you, and you belong to the child. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that partnership also determines the teachability of your child. I want some parents to ask, is my child actually teachable? Because if we're dealing with attention spans, can my child sit still long enough? Like, have I asked my child to read a sentence for me? That partnership between parent and child controls all of that.
some basic things parents can do for home-based involvement. Very simple. Checking the child's homework with them.
And Dr. Miles, I put a comment here in my notes. Not doing the homework for them. I think I said this before. There's a commercial that runs that says, I got off work, I looked up how to do the homework, and then I did it. So you're the parent, you're now a teacher, and in the meantime, what's your child doing? Right?
How to engage your child. If you're in school, set along some time that says it's your study time. So when I study, you have to study also.
Every single day, and a little bit on the weekend as well. Every day.
And it's not punitive, and I don't want to make it sound like it's so dreadful. You can make it can be fun. I mean, like, give the child a star or a cookie or something for a book he finishes. Or
well, let's talk about our goals, Dr. Miles. If we have a goal for this learning for this year, there are rewards built into that. Here's how we're going to celebrate when you learn the things you need to learn. Of course, rewards, but the rewards need to be tied to the partnership agreement as to why education is important.
These are things that parents can do in the home. Mm-hmm. Things that parents can do in the home. One thing I thought about, sometimes there are parents who like to cook. I'm not even with teenagers. Invite the child into the kitchen. Okay, we're going to cook dinner.
Excellent idea. While I cook, you go over your words. While I cook, you read that story that you need to read. Like, read it out loud. We can both be, engaged.
Well, I'm thinking more of not such the academic, but I'm talking about the engagement from the point of view that says, if I know they're talking about, and I can talk about this, if I know they're talking about math, or they're having math issues, or in the kitchen cooking, I need to do a half cup of flour.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be applicable to what the child's being taught. It is just the togetherness, and you're teaching some concepts. And the child starts saying, dang, making math.
And applying learning to life.
Exactly.
Which, again, has to be part of the goal and the partnership. There is also a huge disconnect, Dr. Miles, between learning and life. And children would say, what am I doing with that? Like, why do I need to know that?
That's why they're bored.
That's why they're bored. Absolutely.
Now, parents, there are many things you can do. There are online portals. You can check the child's homework. You can check and see if he did the homework. You can check that while you're at work. Well, if you can. Now, don't get fired checking the homework. But my point, though, is there are many ways you can get involved to let Johnny know that, guess what? I saw you not turned in 3 homework assignments, and you told me that you turned them in. What's the problem?
And Dr. Miles, you can sit on that for a moment. It is a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
Again, across the best environments or socioeconomic levels,
Mm-hmm.
children are not doing homework. Parents, if your child, right, is bold enough to get a homework assignment from a teacher, come home, do whatever, and not do the homework, and you still think you're engaged, there's a problem. That not doing homework is a screaming message that the parents are not engaged, because this child feels comfortable going back to school the next day and saying, oh yeah, I didn't do it.
Well, the thing about it is that when parents are calling for the conferences, and they'll say, I didn't know you can do the homework, which means that you're not engaged. And so, let's just, I don't like to get into these labels too much, but an unengaged parent is a neglectful parent.
Mm-hmm.
An unengaged parent.
And I think we should just mention to them, our goal again tonight is to make this real and to really put emphasis on what it means to take ownership of your child's education. We're not asking you to assist the school. The school is assisting you. You are the owner, right? So as you pointed out, Dr. Miles, when you take your car to the dealership, you don't assume that they're just going to do whatever they need to do, right? You're there to tell them what your car needs.
You definitely don't trust
check
them.
up on it, right? So the same is true when you drop your child off at that school, right? You're there to say, my child is here to get an education. Here's what I expect when they come out, and you're engaged in it.
Let's use that car analogy. Okay, unless the car is a piece of junk, you take it this day. I don't care what they do to it. It's old anyway. Just put some oil in it, any kind of oil. Give me some old used tires too. I don't care. Just let it run. And so I guess my point is, I don't mean to make mockery of it, is we take care of those things that we value. And we shouldn't value anything when we value our children. We're running out of time. I want to give you some other pointers on things that you can do to engage with your children. And the biggest one, Jackie, we said engage. We don't mean scream at them, because screaming ain't engagement. It's negative engagement.
Yeah, by the time you're screaming, again, that's a sign that you're not engaged. You're frustrated because the child is not performing. The child is not performing because, with all due respect, your history says they didn't need to. So now there's frustration.
Create a conducive environment at home, a place that the child can work. And I'm not, I don't assume that everybody has, the finances, but it doesn't really take that much. For instance, in the corner of the room, that's your study area. And that
Listen, Dollar Tree has some great buckets. They cost $1. You put your pencils, your crayon, your paper, ahead of the school year, go buy some poster boards. They have projects to do. Like, those are the messages that say this is important, right? Just like them shoes you went out there and bought, and the cute little shirts and shorts, which is great. That is parenting. That's certainly important. But then so are having school supplies, a set at home and a set in the backpack.
Well, my thought is that have them look good on the outside and on the inside.
Amen.
Have them look good. That same $400 pair of shoes, make sure he got $1 million brain.
I love it.
So it's okay to love them, but you can't just love the outside and don't like the inside.
Love it, right. And I tell you something else that's part of that. Character. Okay, that again, and I think you pointed out earlier, character comes from those relationships. Too many children are dishonest. Too many times they're fighting with their classmates, and all character issues. Basic training about how to interact with people, that comes again from relationships. So it just affects so many parts of the child's development, Dr. Miles. It's really painful when you see children not have that. Parents will tell you, oh, I've never let my child walk around barefoot. Well, the brain is walking around barefoot without that development. Oh, I would never send my child, out without the proper this and the proper that. Well, you're sending the brain out without the proper this and the proper that. That's the most important piece.
Things that parents can do to help their children. Encourage reading habits. I don't really care whether you like reading or not. Well, you can't read. Get the child books. Get him some books he can read and things that he enjoy. You know, nothing wrong with a Sports Illustrated. Nothing wrong with a sports journal. My point is that he's reading or she's reading. So
Feed feed their interest. I say it all the time.
exactly. Encourage a healthy learning process. And the words are, um, you're going to get an education. You may not understand it right now, but guess what? As long as I'm living and breathing, it's going to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about, Jackie mentioned the word character. It's about setting your values and your standards that everybody in this house is going to graduate. Now, it's going to be hard for some of us because I'm going to have to, I encourage you, but
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be a fight for some of us, but it's gonna happen.
you're gonna graduate, and not only graduate, but you're also gonna go to college. You got to do something with yourself. And I can hear those. I can hear them say, "Oh, so you're pushing this thing that you can't be anything without a college education." My whole point is that you got to get something that folk can't take from you.
Right. And Dr. Miles, certainly was shared with us. And again, we know times have changed, but there's some things that I don't think should be lost. There was a time when we understood as a community, and it's not necessarily across the color line, but
Mm-hmm.
an economic line, that education was the path to success.
Yes.
Because
Mm-hmm.
there was a time when we were denied it, right? We were certainly
Right.
denied the public education. And, I joke about this all the time, but at the same time, I mean it. A stick and dirt. I mean, teach your child. Now, of course, you have so many resources
Right.
and, dry erase this, dry erase that, pencil, paper everywhere. I mean, what area doesn't have a school supply giveaway? My point is that parents have so many resources, but the one that's missing is the parent. So, all the books and notebooks and binders in the world, all the software and the laptops, all of that cannot raise your child, cannot educate your child in your absence.
Our time is worn out. It's almost gone. And so at this point, I want us to bring some closure to this. And some closure I have at this point is we're doing this out of love, and we're doing this out of a commitment for the next generation. On next week, the invisible parent. You're at home, but your children don't see you. I want to see you all next week because we're giving you some great, great, great information. So at least you can't say you didn't know. So again, I want to encourage you all to also donate to the foundation. Donate to us. Go to our website, and you have it's the childrensfoundation.net. Donate to us. No donation is too small.
Mm-hmm.
We need your assistance with that. We also want to employ you to make sure that you take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. Jackie, you have any final comments?
No, I do want to just reiterate on your last point. Being able to support your children also means taking care of yourself, especially during COVID. And please, let's talk about the importance of masks. I do think, especially our children, they're aware, but making sure mouths and nose are covered. These are just things that you just reminded me of in your comments, Dr. Mouse. So let's take care of ourselves physically as well as mentally.
So, folks, have a great week. And just know that children are a priority. Have a great week. See you next week, Jackie.
See you next week, Dr. Mouse.